and welcome to Unveil Your Brilliance with Angilie Kapoor here on the Win-Win Women TV network, where each week we explore helping you to break free from the illusions that are holding you back. My name is Angilie Kapoor. I am your host. I am also a conscious leadership coach as well as an empowerment strategist. I'm also a multi-book author, an inspirational speaker, and the founder of my leadership coaching company, Oversight Global. Now, at Oversight Global, we are on a mission to address the consciousness crisis in the world, one leader at a time. Now, bad things do happen. How I respond to them defines my character and the quality of my life. I can choose to sit in perpetual negativity, immobilized by the gravity of my experience, or I can choose to rise from the pain and negativity and treasure the most precious gift I have, which is life itself. And that is a quote by Walter Inglis Anderson, who's an American painter and author. Now, the reason why I share this with you is because in today's episode, we have an amazing young lady joining us to share her story of overcoming trauma and abuse and how she was able to find the beauty amidst the ashes of her pain and unleash the phoenix within her that was just waiting to arise. Now, in my personal journey of self-discovery and transformation, I have come to understand that mindset is the key to unlocking our true potential. Now, through my own experiences, I have discovered that our minds possess immense power, and it is only when we are intentional and take conscious control over our thoughts, our patterns, our beliefs, and behaviors, that we can harness this potential to our advantage. Therefore, it's essential to cultivate a positive and growth-oriented mindset to unleash our true potential and achieve our goals. Now, in relation to today's topic of discussion with our guest, let's look at unhealthy beliefs about the world that can form as a way to make sense of traumatic or abusive experiences. Now, while these beliefs are formed as a defense or protective mechanism, these beliefs also typically keep survivors stuck in a loop of avoidance, fear, worry, anxiety, and hypervigilance. Now, survivors of trauma or abuse often develop mindset blocks or limiting unhealthy beliefs as a protective mechanism. Overcoming these unhealthy limiting beliefs is essential for trauma and abuse survivors because it can help them break free from the cycle of trauma and move forward towards healing. By challenging these beliefs, survivors can begin to reclaim their power and take control of their lives. This often involves seeking support from others and working with a therapist to develop new coping strategies and tools for self-care. Ultimately, the journey towards healing is a process, but overcoming these limiting beliefs is a critical step towards reclaiming one's life and moving towards a brighter future. Now, I won't go into specific strategies of how to successfully overcome these types of unhealthy limiting beliefs, as I'm sure our guest today will have her insights to share with us. Now, in breaking free, we fix our attention on surmounting the numerous challenges that women encounter and shattering the chains of conformity that have held us captive for far too long. This requires a deep understanding of the specific hurdles that us women face. By recognizing and addressing these challenges head-on, we can empower ourselves and future generations of women to break free from the constraints of societal norms and expectations, paving the way for a more equitable and just world. Now, one type of conformity in relation to today's topic is that women who have experienced trauma and abuse often find themselves conforming to the expectations and norms of society to avoid being stigmatized or judged. They may feel that they need to present themselves as normal or okay, even when they're not. This can prevent them from seeking help or speaking out about their experiences as they feel being ostracized or marginalized. Now, overcoming this conformity that the women face requires a collective effort where society needs to actively work towards breaking down stigmas and creating safe spaces for victims to speak out and seek help. By doing so, we can empower women to take charge of their lives and regain agency in their own narrative. Again, I won't go into specific strategies of how to successfully do this, as I'm sure our guest today will have her insights on this to share with us as well. Now, in this segment of brilliant strategies, our focus is on implementing a practical approach that can aid us in unlocking our full potential. Specifically for the topic of discussion today, let's look at the subject of overcoming the agony of trauma and abuse by raising up stronger than before. To achieve this objective, let's look at a strategy of journaling. Now, journaling has proven to be an effective strategy in aiding survivors to overcome the pain and rise up stronger. Now, according to research, journaling can help individuals process their emotions, organize their thoughts, and gain perspective on their experiences. It allows them to identify triggers, patterns, and behaviors that may be connected to their trauma or abuse and assist them in finding ways to cope with these challenges. Additionally, journaling has been proven to reduce symptoms of anxiety, depression, and PTSD among survivors. Overall, journaling provides a safe and private space for survivors to express themselves and navigate their journey towards healing and resistance. Now, this is just one strategy, and I'm excited to see what other strategies our guest today will share with us. Okay, now I am so excited to have our guest for today here with us. Now, before I bring her on, let me tell you a little bit about her. So, Kelsey Elizabeth Matthews is a former mental health professional, an advocate, public speaker, coach, trainer, ordained chaplain, Truman Scholar, and a four-time pageant title holder. Oh my gosh. Kelsey is particularly passionate about and has a heart for survivors of emotional and verbal abuse, especially at the institutional levels. Her TEDx talk, Servants First, How a Loving Approach to Leadership Can Change the World, and her work as the founder and CEO of her company, Phoenix Rising Coaching and Consulting, highlight her passion for helping others heal, overcome, and become the best version of themselves. So, Kelsey, welcome to Unveil Your Brilliance. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you so much. So before we kind of jump into our discussion, can you just share with us a little bit about your story and how you kind of arrived to where you are today?
Absolutely. So I always think it's funny when people ask me that because I have to give the Reader's Digest version. We could be here all day. But I am originally from East Haven, Connecticut. I was born and raised in Connecticut for 18 years, and I was born addicted to drugs. So my mother had a substance use disorder, and she struggled very, very much with drug use. I think it was a little bit of a mixture of a lot of things when she was pregnant. And so I was born very much affected by all of those substances. And I was about 3 pounds when I was born.
Oh, wow.
So coming right into the world, right, I really didn't have a fair shot right away. And so for some reason, I don't know where the disconnect was, but they sent me home with my mother. And I was raised with my mother and my grandparents, which are my mother's parents. And we had a really hard time as a family unit. There was a lot of dysfunction in my home. And of course, as a child growing up in that, I didn't realize that that wasn't normal.
Mhm.
So I was raised in a lot of toxicity, a lot of arguing, yelling, some domestic violence, obviously the drug use. And I, alongside my grandparents, functioned as one of my mother's primary caretakers. And sometimes she would overdose 3 times a week, and I would just find her on the floor, right? So that's a little bit of the idea, little picture, right, of kind of what I grew up in. So there was this generational thing that seemed to kind of be occurring within my family, and I was just born into the mess. So when I look back now, I recognize that really what I was up against was a narcissistic style abuse. I was raised in a very narcissistic household. I just didn't have, obviously, the language to describe what it was that I was experiencing until just recently, as I started to do my own research and learn and grow and heal. And when I was 17 years old, we woke up one morning to find that my mother had died of an accidental drug overdose. And
Mm,
so I was shocked, but I was not surprised, right?
right.
There was that level of, as horrible as that sounds, I was very relieved because I knew that, okay, well, she's done, right? Like she's not suffering anymore and I don't have to do this anymore. I'm free. I can live a life that doesn't have to revolve around all of this.
Right.
And so she died when I was 17. That was in February of 2016. And then in May of 2016, I turned 18.
Mhm.
In June, I graduated from high school. And in August, I got on a one-way flight and I moved to Las Vegas by myself because I knew that the only shot in the dark that I had to make something of myself and
Mhm.
not go down the path that all the other members of my family did before me was to get out of there. And I flew out there and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I got 2 jobs in an apartment and I made it work. And so that's kind of the precursor. That's like to the age of 18. When I got to Vegas, I sought out therapy
Mhm.
because I found my mom dead, right? That's
Right.
trauma right there, not counting
Right.
the 18, 17 years prior to that. When you go into therapy, you're going in trusting that these people are going to do right by you. And that is not what happened to me. And
Mm,
so with that therapist, it was a female, and she ended up entering into what is clinically or ethically called a dual relationship. And it was very confusing to me, and
right.
I had just turned 18. I was in a strange city. I was desperate for connection. And so I allowed this person very close, into my life.
Mhm.
And that's kind of when the gaslighting started and some of the more insidious forms of emotional abuse started. It kept getting worse and worse and worse. And
Right.
I think somewhere within me, I knew that it was wrong, but she kept telling me that it was my fault. And I just love this lady, right? And she told me about Jesus and she actually led me to Christ. And so there was something beautiful that came out of that for me.
Mhm.
But it was very, very unhealthy. And it just turned into this whole horrifying experience.
Mhm.
And I ended up having a nervous breakdown after that because
Mm.
I loved this person.
Mm.
And I look back now and I realize that that was my first encounter with a narcissistic style abuse in adulthood, but I still didn't know. I thought I was going crazy.
Mhm.
But the reality was is that I was trauma bonded to this woman,
Right.
right? So not only was it relational with this individual, but it became institutional. Now there's a legality happening. This is an ethic issue and a legal issue now. And so I realize now that that was institutional or institutionalized abuse as well,
Mhm.
because you have the individual, but then you have the institution, the healthcare facility. So that was
Right.
my first experience of three with institutional abuse in my adulthood. There was a church leader
Mhm.
and a church, a religious organization, and then there was a professor and an academic department. And that last one, I never thought that anything could be more devastating to me than the therapist, but it was actually the academic institution.
Right.
That was the worst betrayal of my entire life.
Mhm.
And so I went through all of these experiences, and that's how we got here today. I wish it was a little less painful, but sometimes in life we have to go through these really painful, horrible experiences because God can use those and because there's a plan for those things. And so those have been some of the experiences that have brought me right here in front of you.
Right. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. You definitely have been through a lot in your young life, but I'm glad that, somehow something told you that all that wasn't okay. And, you are
Right.
sitting here today sharing your story to help other people. And actually, that's a question I wanted to ask. So, do you kind of think that maybe this is something that commonly happens, but that not a lot of people are aware that it's happening?
Absolutely. So it happens in every institution.
Mhm.
And the first time I thought it was a fluke. I thought I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that was just a horrible accident.
Right, like bad
I
luck.
didn't. Right, right. Well, it wouldn't shock me, right? Hello. But I didn't think that people like that could actually exist.
Right.
I mean, I'm a very pure soul, right? Like I love people. I love to love people. I love to care for people. So the thought that people like that could be real and really do that to people,
Mhm.
and slander them and lie and ruin their reputation and tell people that they're crazy, right? Like, and I'm a good target. I was an easy target in all these scenarios because these people knew what my vulnerabilities were.
Right.
And so it happens very, very frequently because the
Mhm.
second time I'm like, okay, wait, this is very familiar. And it felt like a horrible case of deja vu.
Right.
But I still couldn't quite, I identified the second time, I was like, wait, this is like institutional abuse where you have an institution. And I started to put two and two together, but they were still gaslighting me. Like the church
Right.
was gaslighting me. And
Right.
they were trying to talk me out of what I was starting to catch on to. So I
Mhm.
left the church and then I didn't know that I was in the middle of it with the academic department. And I was just in all of this. It's all happening at once. And then the third time I'm like, oh no, this is not a coincidence. People like this really exist. And I had to step out of denial and I
Mhm.
had to take those rose colored glasses off. And it was extremely painful.
Mhm.
But I had to, for my own well being, because if I kept living in denial, I was only going to be hurting myself. I
Mhm.
don't play when it comes to protecting people.
Right.
But institutions have a duty to protect the public. I started doing what I could to stand up and say, no, this
Mhm.
behavior is wrong.
Right.
And that's when I realized this isn't just a me problem.
Mhm.
This is a societal, institutional problem with the way that our institutions are run
Right.
and the way that the hierarchies are set up. But to get
Mhm.
back to your question and come back around, yes, it happens very, very frequently.
Right.
The government's an institution. Universities and schools are institutions, healthcare facilities, religious organizations. How many stories do we hear come out of these institutions of mass corruption
Mhm. Right.
and money being used in improper ways?
Right.
So it's very, very common, but not a lot of people understand it. It's not a dynamic that a lot of people understand. An
Right.
institution, when it's toxic and unhealthy, is just like an abusive, unhealthy family dynamic.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with you. I have also experienced that a couple of times. I experienced it in church as well. And that took me a few years to actually realize that that was happening. And so,
Right.
yeah, I experienced that there and then was able to recognize it and get myself out, fortunately. But, looking back, I know that there were tons of people who were in that same situation, but did not recognize it and thought that it was normal. And then,
Absolutely.
a few years later, I experienced the same in the workplace. And, because of that experience, it actually led me to what I do today and have been doing for the past 5 years is, again, we have these weak leaders in places that they shouldn't be. And so, part of what I, hope to accomplish is to really, like you, bring light to that and say, this isn't okay. This has
Right.
consequences for generations to come. I mean, it has had consequences for, past generations. And so definitely changing that perspective and that dynamic that, a true leader is somebody who cares about other
Yes,
people and who actually
absolutely.
serves other people, not, being in their position to serve themselves and to, work their own agendas. That's not what it's all about. But that seems to be, what leadership is when we look at it right now. And so, like you, I know that that's not right. And I hope that we can, help other people recognize that and
Right.
turn that concept and that perspective and that norm around. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. So
Absolutely.
are there any final thoughts that you want to share with the ladies who are watching this?
Some of the things that I did for myself to get to this place that I'm at now, I'm the most healed that I've ever been, right? And I always like to point out that you never arrive, right? We're constantly growing and learning and evolving. And if we're not, then something's wrong. But
Exactly.
there were some things that I discovered on my own healing journey that I wanted to be able to share. There's two things in particular when you're thinking about self-awareness and getting to the root of your problem or to the root of your triggers. What was happening with me when I was trying to heal and I was dealing with all this mass chaos with all these people is I was getting triggered.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize that I thought, look, that external thing, I thought that these people were triggering me,
Mhm.
right? I thought it was them.
Right.
But then I came to understand that it was their behavior, but what they were doing was hitting a wound. It
Mhm.
wasn't really about them. It wasn't really about anything that they said or did to me. And I came to understand that it wasn't the trigger. It wasn't the external event.
Mhm.
It was the unhealed things within me that was bringing up,
Mm.
because it all goes back to childhood. For most people, things go back to childhood whether they're conscious of it or not. Yes, it was painful, but it wasn't really about them. It had something to do with something that my mother did somewhere or that my grandmother did somewhere. And so what I started to do is I started to go inward every single time I got
Mhm.
triggered.
Mhm.
And that's actually the second piece of the second strategy. I call it practice the pause.
Mhm.
So I would get triggered, and instead of immediately reacting outward, I would pause and I would say, okay, wait a minute. Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? And why am I wanting to react the way that I'm wanting to react?
Mhm.
Because a lot of the times there was a lot of emotional regression. So the reaction that I was having wasn't actually 25-year-old Kelsey experiencing that in the moment. It
Mhm.
was something that the childhood version of me experienced
Right.
when I was a kid that hadn't healed, and it was hitting that, and I was expressing the pain that I actually felt as a little girl.
Mhm.
And I would ask myself, what version of Kelsey is this? How old am I right now?
Mhm.
And I would take some time and I would think about it. And then what I would do is I would go back internally and I would nurture that part of myself in the way that I didn't get it externally.
Mm.
So those were pieces of myself as a child that my caregivers should have nurtured in those moments, and they didn't. So
Right.
I started to go inward and I started to tend to myself,
Mhm.
and I would validate myself and
Right.
I would comfort myself and I would nurture myself.
Mhm.
And slowly but surely, the triggers stopped. Slowly but surely, I started to gain control over my emotions and over my reactions,
Mhm.
to the point now where things happen that would have triggered me before, and they
Right.
don't now,
Mhm.
because there was a huge level of healing that happened when I did that.
Right.
These aren't things I don't think that we teach enough
Right.
from a very trauma-informed, realistic place of
Mhm.
people walk around triggered all the time every day. Most people don't realize that they are just replaying their childhoods. They're functioning out of a subconscious, unconscious place of childhood wounding.
Right.
But we don't enough get to the root cause of those wounds. As a society, we like to band-aid things.
Right.
We like
Exactly.
to put a Band-Aid on a symptom, but
Mhm.
what about the wound that's causing that behavior? And so that's what I did on the biggest part of my journey, was pause, reflect, figure out what version of me was upset by that. How
Mhm.
old am I in this response? What was happening to me when I was having the response, processing through the trauma,
Mhm.
and then comforting myself. And eventually, I have now become the person that I needed.
Right.
I've become the person internally that I used to seek for externally.
Right.
So I wanted to share those two little pieces of wisdom, because I don't think that we talk about things like that enough.
Right, right. Yeah, no, that is amazing. Yeah, I love that. And, definitely something that all of our viewers will be able to utilize.
Mhm.
You don't need to have to have gone through a life of being traumatized. We all have our mindsets are, solidified when I think they say it's like age 7. Is really where
Right,
development, yeah, of your mindset
right,
actually happens. And so we go into adulthood with, like you're saying, a childlike mindset. So when we go through situations where we are being triggered, like you're saying, it's not that person or even that
right.
present moment. It's something that happened in your past that is triggering. And again,
Absolutely.
yeah, if you need to heal from that so that you can get those triggers to stop, like you've been able to do with yourself. So thank you so much. Definitely something that all of the women watching are going to be able to utilize, as we all have triggers and we all need to really, burrow down and figure out what the root of them are and how to heal from them so we can stop being triggered. So that's amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So please share with us where the ladies can connect with you, find you, stay updated on when you're going to get your coaching up and going so they can reach out to you if that resonates with them.
Absolutely. So that was where I was going next. I always like to leave my contact information. All of my social media accounts, you can find me under just Kelsey Elizabeth Matthews.
Mhm.
On Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, they're all verified. I'm looking to start my first mastermind group for coaching based on John Maxwell's 15 invaluable laws of growth.
Mhm.
And so I'm looking to start a little group, get some ladies together and walk them through those 15 laws and help them really start to apply those. If there's anybody that's listening that's interested, so you could find me on social media. If you're listening and something I've said has resonated with you, please do feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you.
That's great. Yes, thank you so much for that. And yeah, we will go ahead and put all of Kelsey's links in the episode description. So if you would like to follow her or stay updated on what's going on with her coaching, be sure to do that. So Kelsey, again, thank you so much for being here. You shared so much invaluable knowledge and insights. And thank you so much for being vulnerable and transparent and sharing your journey with us. I really appreciate it. And I know that the ladies watching are going to get a lot out of it.
Thank you so much for having me, Angilie. I really appreciate it.
Now, ladies, are you tired of feeling like you're stuck in the same old rut, unable to reach your full potential? Do you have dreams and goals that seem to always be out of your reach? Well, you're not alone. Statistics show that 92% of people who set out to achieve something never actually do. But you can break free from being part of this statistic. I want to offer all of my viewers a chance to unveil their brilliance by providing a free high performance strategy coaching session. The purpose of this complimentary coaching session is to help you kickstart your journey towards fulfilling your fullest potential by breaking free from the illusions holding you back. You see, I understand the difficulties that arise when you're trying to make positive changes in your life. It can be hard to find the time, the motivation, and the guidance to take that first step. But that's why I am here to offer my guidance and support to help you get to where you want to be. Now, during your complimentary coaching session, we'll work together to create a personalized plan that fits your unique needs and goals. Together, we'll identify the habits and beliefs that are holding you back and find strategies to overcome them. But it's not just about productivity. We'll also talk about self-care and creating a healthy balance in your life. Now, if you are ready to take the first step towards unveiling your brilliance, I encourage you to schedule your free high-performance strategy coaching session with me today. You won't regret it. Let's work together to create the life that you truly desire and love. Okay, and that is it for today's episode on Rising from the Ashes with guest Kelsey Elizabeth Matthews. I want to thank Kelsey again for joining us today and for sharing her story and her message of resilience, hope, healing, and transformation. And I also want to thank you, beautiful lady, for being here with me today as well. Now, if you're here with me live, be sure to join me in the second half of the show for Brilliant Connections, where I get to meet you and get to know you, and you're able to ask me any questions that you might have from today's episode topic. If you're catching this on replay, thanks so much for watching. I hope that you'll check out our previous episodes as well on winwinwomen.tv/show/unveil-your-brilliance, as well as join me live next week. Remember, your negative experiences, any traumas that you have experienced, they are bruises. They are not tattoos. As you move forward, keep in mind that your past does not define you. Just as bruises eventually fade away, so too can the pain and hurt of negative experiences and traumas. You are not bound by them, and you have the power to heal and grow beyond them. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next week. My lady's here with me live. I will see you in a few seconds.